Well, today I have the distinct pleasure of hosting Beatrice Ashe, an absolutely lovely young woman that I met years ago and was so surprised that she was so knowledgeable about aircraft maintenance and management. And of course, she's employed by one of the best, Jet Aviation. Beatrice, thanks so much for joining us today. Can you tell me the new hybrid role title that you're in so that we get that right here?
Yes, and Renee, thank you so much for having me here and for inviting me to one of these video interviews. It's a pleasure being here and always a pleasure working with you. I've been working at our headquarters in Basel for some years, and I was just recently requested to relocate over here to the US to kind of drive aircraft management on the Northwest, but also to align our MRO business in Burbank with the rest of the global maintenance operations of Jet Aviation. So that's right now I'm driving MRO and some aircraft management.
How did you get into aircraft maintenance in the beginning?
Following my degree, I received a job with JSSI, Jet Support Services, who does an hourly cost maintenance program for the aircraft. And that's kind of how my maintenance history began. And I found it fairly interesting. And then I moved over to sales with Jet Aviation over in Europe.
Really what I want to go into on our interview today is how people can set themselves up for a successful transfer of ownership, whether they are the buyer or the seller, and making sure that they've done their due diligence on the aircraft.
I'm really happy that you're bringing up this subject because it is very controversial, and everyone is in such a sensitive position when they're going into a pre-purchase inspection. It's been taking them a long time to find an aircraft, to decide what size of the aircraft, which model of the aircraft, which make of the aircraft, all these questions. And now you finally think that you have your perfect aircraft. And you need to go through an inspection. And I think the most important tip I would have for going into a PPI is just to know beforehand what is decided, where are we going to go if A happens, and what are we going to do if B happens, and who's responsible for the airworthiness items. Usually that's the seller, but the cosmetic items, and what's the level of the cosmetic items that I as a buyer agree to buy into. And you need to have, what I always recommend is before the PPI even begins, you have a handoff meeting. And in this handoff meeting, you have clearly defined who is the seller, who is the buyer, and who is the decision maker from the seller, and who is the decision maker from the buyer. And it should only be one person on each side. Preferably you have someone on site to make sure that the decisions are made quickly. But the maintenance facility, everyone needs to know each and everyone's role.
Tell me a little bit about how you look at the history of an aircraft as part of the bigger picture of the aircraft's airworthiness.
And for the history of the aircraft, this is really when we recommend to look at the documentation review. I always recommend my clients to include a documentation review when you purchase an aircraft, because this is where you will see the whole history of the aircraft from birth to present, and it will be in a chronological order. You can see the logbooks. You will find in there, that the logbook has been verified and all the scheduled maintenance has been done when it needed to be done. If any corrosion repairs has been done. You can find if there's been any modifications or STCs, and if you have the burn certificates for those, instructions for continued airworthiness. I mean, you will, by reading and having someone obviously who knows how to do a documentation review is key. But when they see the logbooks, they don't even have to see the aircraft. They will give you a really good picture of this is the status of the aircraft, and I would recommend you to buy it, or you should be concerned about these highlighted areas.
What would you say is the least amount of work, or the few things that have to be in any aircraft inspection?
I think I would still say that you should do a boroscope on the engine and the APU, just to make sure if there's any FODs, foreign object debris, or risk of corrosion. I mean, an engine, or worst case, 2 engines. I mean, that's the most expensive part of the aircraft. So this is really where you have the highest risk. So I would always, just the first level of the compressor, have a look and make sure it's okay. And then to do a physical check of corrosion. Corrosion is normally not covered by warranty or any programs. So here you also run a risk as a buyer if you do have any likelihood of corrosion later on. And then you can check like the avionic mandates. This could become very costly if where you're going to operate the aircraft, what avionic mandates do you require? Are they installed already? Or is this going to be an extra cost? And then the same on the Wi-Fi. Today, I think most of us want to have some sort of connectivity on the aircraft, especially during COVID times, that even though you're 40,000 feet up in the air, you should be able to call home to your family or to your office or whomever it might be. So these are things that are costly and that you want to make sure that you have figured out before buying the aircraft.
From an insider's point of view, what you would recommend to a buyer when they're selecting the location for their pre-purchase inspection?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there are many factors. I mean, you want it to be an easy point of access to your representative. If you are able to send a person to site, then that's great. Or if you can have it next door, that's wonderful. Anything where you can have a personal relationship or have someone in your team that can have a personal relationship with the maintenance facility, that makes the whole process smoother and quicker. So location is one part, but most importantly, the maintenance facility of your choice needs to have a deep knowledge in that aircraft type. Have a company that has a PPI process. They know they have the handover, however they have their process, but they need to have a process for PPIs, and they need to have the capabilities of looking into the aircraft. You're coming in with a light inspection. If you are prepared, and if this facility only does like line maintenance or smaller checks, then you need to be prepared that you might have to move the aircraft if you find any deeper squawks. So just kind of be aware of how deep you want to go and how much you want the maintenance facility to be able to do. Obviously, the more they can do, the smoother the process is going to be.